Hi everybody, welcome to the QB School. I am JT O'Sullivan. Today, what is Power Read? We are diving into the details. This is a Power Read clinic, fired up, locked in. Let's get it going. Welcome to the QB School. So before we dive into this video, quick reminder about the Quarterback School Patreon community. It is a great way to support the channel. Never been cheaper, never been more content available over there. So if you're interested in supporting the channel, get even more Quarterback School content, hop over to the Quarterback School Patreon community. The link is in the video description. In addition, this video is really kind of an example of what is available through the JTO Offensive Framework course, which is in essence an entire offensive system. I'm going to talk through exactly how we did Power Read at the high school level. This can be overlaid over damn near any system. I personally love clinics that not only break it down for the novice, for someone who has basically no idea what it is, but also goes really quickly with clear communication and gives you their kind of tricks of the trade. So things I learned over the course of this thing failing and then running at what I consider a pretty high level. So I'm excited to dive into the details. What we're going to do here is kind of talk through it. And then I'm going to show you some diagrams, some teaching points, kind of the underlying rules of how we ran it. There's a bunch of different ways to run it, so don't freak out if it isn't exactly how you run it at your school and your system. This is just how we ran it. And then I'm going to show some clips at the end, kind of where I like it in the field, how I thought it was successful for us at the high school level, and just kind of talk holistically about where I think it's best. So Power Read, what is it? In essence, it's power. But now we are reading whatever gap defender we want. I personally prefer it and only ran it to the C gap. So a C gap read, play side C gap read. And you essentially are having the quarterback be the power runner, and you're having the back or wide receiver in the jet sweep, fly sweep world be kind of the edge perimeter runner. A lot of people will call it inverted veer. I personally don't love to frame it like that just because I don't think of veer with gap runs and pulling people, but I'm not a veer person, so don't freak out if you are. But for me, this is a downhill double team at the point of attack. We are running the quarterback and we are reading the C gap defender. Now, I think there's a lot of little unique things, but the core of it and why I think it's so successful is because quarterbacks have become more athletic. But for the offensive line or the run blocking unit, specifically the offensive line, it is the same as power for the most part. I'll talk about a little bit, maybe some tricks of the trade as far as pulling guards that you can kind of give for tips to be able to sort through maybe some different looking fronts or different looking looks when you're pulling. But in essence, it is the same as power. We're just changing the ball carrier. We're adding a read element to it. And so we're going to kind of go through exactly what I'm talking about here as far as why I like Power Read and maybe why some people don't like Power Read. So the first part about why people wouldn't like Power Read, or why many people don't like Power Read, or maybe why I struggled to call it early on as a play caller at the high school level, is because you don't want to run your quarterback in between the tackles. Maybe you don't want to run your quarterback at all. Maybe your quarterback can't run. Well, all of those essentially are disqualifiers. But if you get to the point where you are willing to run your quarterback, you are willing to run your quarterback between the tackles in certain situations. I'm not saying necessarily I want to call this 15 times a game, but I do think it is an outstanding spread run that if you fall into the world where we fell into as far as being gap-centric and really loving double teams at the point of attack and being able to trust your quarterback to read kind of at the point of attack, first-level defender, this is an outstanding play. I personally loved it. We ran it the most when we had to run it. So if we didn't have to run it, I wasn't going to run Power Read a lot. But if we were playing against what I considered a really good team, really good front, maybe an unblockable guy at the point of attack, we would certainly sprinkle this in. I also found that I used it a lot in the mid-red zone. So areas like 10, 15, 8-ish in the red zone going in. I think it's hard to be able to throw the ball at the high school level unless you have like an in-depth kind of deep red zone package over the course of an entire season. It's a hell of a lot easier to run it in. I thought this was one of our best runs to stay in spread, also do gap-centric runs, have double teams, give it to potentially one of our better athletes and have them a chance to kind of fall forward into the end zone. So for us, we ran it a lot in the mid-red zone. But the essence of it is I don't want to do this all the time. I don't want to run our quarterback where they're running vertical with their shoulders squared in between the tackles all the time, especially versus a guy maybe that doesn't run low or isn't a natural runner. But at the end of the day, with how we were attacking defenses, specifically at the C gap, I think of this as a C gap centric run. We only ran it to the C gap, and I'll talk about exactly what that looks like when we get into the diagrams. But we were always reading the C-gap defender, and we were putting a lot of stress on C-gap defenders over the course of a game. So for me, that means we're kicking out a C-gap defender, we're pinning a C-gap defender, so we also want to have the capacity to read a C-gap defender. You can certainly do that a bunch of different ways. We did it with the zone read game. I just prefer, as a philosophical approach, double teams, and I prefer double teams at the point of attack. I like having different double teams, meaning some vertical double teams or combos in our language, or horizontal displacement double teams, which are more gap centric in our verbiage. So to be able to have this horizontal double team where we're trying to get movement towards the Gatorade and be able to run our quarterback through what I consider good looking holes up front with the potential for a big home run hit is stuff that I really liked. The other things that I really liked were different backfield actions. Now, we never majored in this power read world. We did incorporate some of these in other runs, specifically Bash GT stuff. And to me, it's just potentially, instead of reading the power read with the back comes across your face most often, we would have toss action. We called it tasty. We experimented with doing more zone read, true kind of what I consider inverted stuff, where you have the back and quarterback essentially switch roles and have the back in pistol, have the back going downhill. He's now running the power, and the quarterback is essentially running the bash or the edge element of power read. So you're basically flipping those roles. We also experimented with running what I'm used to calling power counter. We actually called it power kick. And all that meant is, instead of reading the C-gap defender, we were now reading the play side linebacker. So instead of the pulling guard pulling to the front side inside linebacker, now the pulling guard was kicking out the end man on the line of scrimmage or the C-gap defender, and we were reading the linebacker. We experimented with all of those in practice. I don't know if we ever ran one over the course of 3 years in the system. We certainly had the capacity to do it. We were just so C-gap centric that it made sense for us to just keep reading the C-gap defender. And honestly, at the high school level, at least where I was at, it really felt like feast or famine for a lot of C-gap defenders on defense. They either felt like they were their dudes, like it was a real problem, or they potentially were the last guys to maybe be one of the starting 11 for our defense. So we really wanted to put a lot of stress on those guys and or not deal with them at all. So this was a really nice job to be able to do all of those things all in one play. Now, little unique things that I thought we did really well with this play that I want to make sure that I share are, first of all, I think everyone who runs the ball well thinks that they probably have a really good communication system up front. One of the things that we did really well, I thought, was our communication, both in preparation and in game. So how we communicated, we'll talk about what our calls were up front. We also had what I'm used to calling, I don't know if we invented, but I was not familiar with it before we did it. We would have our play side run blocking unit come up and yell Carl for the C-gap defender. So everyone knew who you were reading. It wasn't a surprise. So it was Carl 55, Carl 95, Carl 8, whatever. Carl was the call. Carl, C-gap, L, leave, you're welcome. Carl, really tough. In addition to that, we also did on the backside of this, well, I might as well go through the whole thing right now. For me, power read is the same as power. I'll quickly talk through what the rules were for us. If this doesn't hit you crystal clear, I will show images that will show you and walk us through it. But just so we can talk through the same language, if you're part of the play side run blocking unit, meaning you're part of the offensive line on the play side, so we're running power read to you and you are a center, guard, or tackle, you have what our rules were gap down backer. So you have the gap down away from the run. If we're running power read to the right, you have the gap down. If it's not there, you're down to you have the potential for a horizontal combo or double team to the backside inside linebacker. That's gap down rules for us, gap down backside backer. If you're the backside pulling guard, you have what we called a rapid pull. All that means is that you are pulling for the inside play side linebacker. If you are the backside tackle, A lot of people call this block a gap hinge. We called it a block it because it overlapped into a couple of our other RPO runs, but I liked calling it a block it versus a gap hinge, because gap hinge to me, sometimes guys will get overwhelmed in the B gap if they feel like they have to lose with dignity with 2. We really wanted that B gap to be essentially cemented or solid and allow that free runner to be in the C gap on the backside. So we called it a block it, which it really is a gap hinge, but it is B gap centric. So we don't want any penetration potentially from that B gap backside. Then on the front side, if we ran it to a tight end, we didn't always run it to a tight end, but the tight end was never part of the gap down element of our power game. So if it was true power, we were kicking out usually with the sniffer. If it was power read, they are auto arcing. So they are arc blocking for whoever shows up outside the C gap. And so we could run it to a wing, we could run it to bunch, we could run it to nub, but that tight end was not going down in our power read game. Again, this was just how we did it. Technically, you could do that, but again, when we're talking C gap, we're talking A gap, center guard, B gap, guard, tackle, C gap, tackle, tight end. So that C gap, we didn't want that tight end coming down and muddy in that C gap look, so we always auto arced it. The other thing that we did that we found that we really liked, or I really liked, is I essentially would tell the quarterback, I'm calling this because I want the quarterback to carry the ball. Now that doesn't mean that you never give it to the back on the action across. I'll talk about the action across. But if we wanted to do that, we would call some element of sweep or pin and pull or outside zone. I'm calling this because I'm anticipating the C-gap defender getting with and us running up underneath him. So just that understanding that, hey, if it's blurry, I need you to keep it. But what I would tell the quarterback is you have 2 shuffles. The running back has the 5-yard line all the way to the sideline. I would tell them, the running backs, I want 5 hard steps coming out of this thing, and it turns into punt return right. But the quarterback has 2 shuffles to make that C-gap defender make a decision. If it's blurry, hand it off, but know that I'm calling it with the intent that I think the big hit is going to come from you carrying the ball right off the double team. The part about running the ball for the quarterbacks is I always tell them, same thing I would tell the wrapper or the pulling guard, is hug that double team. Tight turn, make it as tight as you possibly can, and get north and south as quickly as possible coming off that double team. So now let's get into a couple images here. We'll start with the communication, the teaching, how we talk about the double teams and the front side rules, and then we will jump into some of the images for different fronts that we'll see in some of this video. So rules wise here, this is how we talked about our gap run double teams to the backside linebacker. So if we're going to run any gap run to the right, a double team between the center and guard was an ace. A double team between the guard and tackle was a deuce. And those were the only 2 that we use in the power read world. Okay, we had different calls for different runs where we get into double teams out here with this in the C gap, which are tray, and if we had wing or bunch, it'd be a quad. But for us, for this video, we're talking about a lot of aces and a lot of deuces, and really more deuces than anything else. Again, when we're talking about gap run double teams, the things that are really important to pay attention to here is we want horizontal displacement. So hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder. You'll hear some people say like gallop into this cat. I'm trying to knock this A-gap player into the Gatorade sideways. And then we're climbing up to the backside backer. Same thing here on the deuce. If it was a deuce here, someone showed up right here, we want this thing to go hard sideways as we climb up here. So you can really see this big lane with the horizontal sideways displacement from our ace and deuce. Next, we're going to talk about our pulling guard. So right here, we're going to talk about wraps. This was a wrap for us. Wrap for us meant that you were going to the play side inside linebacker. So if we're running power read to the right and we are all the left guard, okay, we are wrapping. We experimented with a bunch of different ways to do it. This is not necessarily an O-line technique way to talk through exactly what the technique of this thing is. I personally always prefer to skip. We ended up doing it basically just turn and run to where you could get through here and sort this thing out and get as tight as you possibly can. Okay, again, the kind of coaching points that we talked about. Tight track, you're going to the play side inside linebacker, and tight track means that you are pulling and as tight as you can to the double team. So knowing that you're going to hear the call, is it an ace? Is it a deuce? And that will tell you where your track is. You want that track to be as tight as possible. The other thing that I used to have to talk with our guys a lot about is just the idea that you got to go in there and you might have an idea who you're going to block pre-snap, but you got to go in there with bad intentions. We had a bunch of guys that like to finish with their hands necessarily down here. We're not bench pressing people. We're finishing with our shoulders, and then we're driving cats out of the screen. But the thing that isn't on here that we ended up talking about with certain guys is that as we go specifically on power read, so this is a power read specific coaching point, if we're leaving that C-gap defender here, there's going to be free color right here. So as you pull, as you wrap, you're going to see color flash. And oftentimes offensive line are taught to don't let free color run like in pass protection. Well, this time you're going to see free color. So you've got to have blinders on up to that play side inside linebacker trying to square him up and hit him into the goalpost. So you have to essentially have blinders on. And I'll show examples of guys not having blinders on and guys having blinders on. So not hitting that C-gap flash. So you hear so if you're playing backside guard, okay, we're all playing left guard here. You're going to hear the double team call. So let's say it's a deuce. You're going to hear the deuce. So you're going to get horizontal displacement. They're going to go up. You're going to hear the Carl call. So Carl, 55, whatever. So you're going to know 55 is your free guy. So you're going to come across, blinders on, do not block 55, and get up to whoever shows in the play side inside linebacker spot. And the way that we talked about play side versus backside is you just draw a line right through the football. The first backer that has his whole body on the play side, that's the play side. So as opposed to getting into Sam, Will, whatever you want to call them, that's how we determine play side. So a lot going on here. The things that I feel like I talked the most with our guys about was a tight track and going in there with bad intentions. All right, here are some drawings versus the way that we install it in our system to be able to go through what all these reads look like. So these are pretty generic fronts. Don't freak out. I understand you're going to see a lot of non-static, non-clean fronts, but we're just going to go through the rules here. Okay, so for an even front here, we're going to get a deuce call. We already talked about the play side. We're running, all these are to the right. Okay, we called our power read to the right Greece. We called our power read to the left Portugal. Okay, so verse and even, we're going to get a deuce. So let's just go through one. I'm not going to do this for every single one, but just one little slide here. This is the play side of the run unit. The play side rule is gap down backer. Gap down, somebody's there. Gap down, nobody there. We got an opportunity for a double team, vertical double team. It's a deuce. We got the guard and the tackle. Horizontal displacement. That's the big boy block. This is who we're running behind, this deuce. Okay, we're going to get the Carl on the defensive end. Little read emoji. You're welcome. Okay, Carl, and he's going to arc. Okay, to block the first thing outside, most often at the second level. On the backside, we've got a wrap. Okay, we talked about the wrap rules. The wrap rules are tight track, off the double team to the play side inside linebacker. There it is. Square him up, knock him to the goalpost. And on the backside, we've got to block it. Okay, this is really just a gap hinge. Again, this is important. I want to make sure I really stress this. We got in trouble versus our own defense in practice sometimes about getting backside pressure and this thing blowing up the play. So pretend this tackle was more of a shade. So now the center's not going very far. And this guy hits this thing with good speed and knocks our tackle back as he tries to, what I'm used to calling kickstand this. So he'd give his right hand and kind of lose with dignity with his left hand out here. We ended up just saying, hey, we're going to leave this C-gap guy. He's never going to make the play on the backside, and we're going to blunt this thing in the B-gap. So the B-gap is the priority with this block it call. So just a different way to emphasize gap hinge. Okay, quarterback-wise, 2 shuffles, and then we're tight track down off the double team. The back. Okay, so the way that we used to talk about this to the back is the back puts his toes at 5 yards, and he has the 5-yard line for 5 hard steps. Okay, the quarterback has to catch it and get out of his way. So he either needs to get deeper or kind of shuffle back to give him that track because he's hitting at 1,000 miles an hour. And I can't remember. We definitely gave it to the back a lot in practice. We did not give it to the back a lot in games. Again, I was calling it. It helps when I'm calling it from the sidelines, and I know we got a wide C-gap player. So it's already baked into the process. But I think this communication, this is not like drawing communication. This is play side. They would yell this, not yell, talk. Deuce, deuce, Carl, Carl. And we'll see on film when they're pointing out the Carl. So again, just quickly, all these are power read to the right. You can see an ace here versus a 3-3. It's probably not how, I guess that is how we would sort it out. Okay, not a great look versus an old school bear versus 11 personnel. But again, you can see everybody sorted out. Versus an odd, again, we get a base, or an ace, I should say. Geez, ace to the backside inside linebacker, and we're wrapping to the play side inside linebacker. Again, this would be a tight hit, but we want to run this thing off the double team. And again, you can see the block it here. Now, there are different ways to do different things. Some people might block this a little bit differently where they bring this guy back. But again, we were focused on the double teams. So we wanted as many double teams as possible. So those are the drawings. Now let's get into the film. All right, let's look at some video here. We're going to go 3x1 power read to the right to the bottom of the screen. I used to like this yo-yo motion just to kind of widen that C-gap defender if we could. We're going to read 22. We're going to go right off the double team. So I think this is a nice deuce to get us started. We'll watch it once and then I'll slow it down just so we can go through the rules. We're running power read to the right. 22 is a C-gap defender, easy to see. See if we can see the communication. No pointing out the Carl. Carl 22. Deuce to the backside inside linebacker. That's a big hole. Ha ha. Run through common color is also the kind of phrase that I'll use all the time in this run game. So again, we're running to the right. So all three of these guys have gap down. Gap down, there he is. Nobody here, so we get an opportunity for a double team. Between these two, that's a deuce. So we're going to deuce backside. We're going to arc the tight end, sniffer. And then we are going to wrap, pull the backside guard. There's the play side. And then we're going to block it on the backside tackle. So he's got to secure that B-gap, gap hinge. Okay, quarterback is going to two shuffle. So clear this thing out. Two shuffle. We're going to read the conflict defender, C-gap defender right here. He gets any sort of width. We want to pull that thing and run right off the double team. So we're trying to get vertical with that horizontal displacement from the double team. So how about that double team hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder? Pretty good. Right guard, right tackle. Nice job coming off to the second level as well. Good job by the center getting the pin, and that's a big hole. Great job by the quarterback getting vertical. How many shuffles does he take? 1, 2, vertical, foot in the ground. Love it. You can see here, I think the arc, the tight end, and the wrap, the backside guard, end up going to the same play side inside linebacker. The arc is blocking like we're giving it to the back, so he doesn't know who's got the ball. That's a nice job from our quarterback. This quarterback was really athletic, good runner. Same thing here. We're going to go power read. You can't see the quarterback there. We'll see it from the back. This is a big run versus a really good opponent. This opponent was 4 divisions ahead of us. So we're going to run power read to our left. We're reading 52. Get that double team right guard, right tackle. Nice job by the right guard coming off again. Nice job by the wrapper kicking out too here. This is a little handsy for me on 20, but still pretty good. And then that's the other thing about this play is that when you, again, you can see me motion the sniffer. I think motioning the sniffer, just a little trick of the trade here. If you run it at a 3x1, or if you motion, however you motion this, I personally think it's an easy tip to be able to get this guy to widen, to think he's either getting reached or kicked. So he wants to widen, and now we just widen him and arc him. So it just makes the read a little bit easier. That's why I do it a lot. Nice deuce here. Back to 56. Again, this wrap to me to 20 is a little handsy as far as his hands coming in as opposed to his shoulder striking. But again, different techniques for different places. Again, really nice job by the right guard coming off. And again, the thing that I wanted to say here that I hadn't mentioned yet is a lot of the big time runs come out the backside. So you're going to shuffle, shuffle, hit this thing, and then it's not necessarily a straight downhill if you're the quarterback. The big runs come almost like a cutback. Now you can anticipate it. I certainly tell them the big runs come back the other way. You don't want to be just guessing back here though, because that's where the cavalry is coming in and out. So it's rarely going to be out to the front side. The big runs almost always happen as a cutback. So back, downhill, cut. Nice finish, get in the end zone. Let's go. Next one here, again, 3x1. We're going to run power read up top. So you can see the sniffer. Look at the sniffer here. I'll go back here. You can see the sniffer pointing out the C-gap defender right there. Point, Carl. He's yelling 55, Carl. Read, go. And again, another thing, a little trick of the trade for the pulling guard, for the wrapping backside guard. Oftentimes that play side inside linebacker will be wide. So we'll see here. Watch number 1, the sniffer on our left. Watch him point out 55. There he is. Carl, yelling. Helps the quarterback too. If you're playing multiple guys, we were playing multiple guys. So he's the C-gap defender. So this is a pretty easy read. He's already that wide, right? This guy was a really smart player for us. On this play, he could cheat his split to make this C-gap even wider. And that's a really wide C-gap. But if you're the backside guard and you're the wrapping for 44 was their best player by far, a lot of good play side inside linebackers will be flowing with this, because we've got what I'm used to calling the batter, but really it's that bash cross action. So this action, so that backer 44 is going to flow. So when you go to wrap at the snap of the ball, he's here. But when you go to block him, if you're wrapping, he's not going to be here. You got to go where he is. So just knowing that those things are not static landmarks, that you got to really use your eyes and be able to go search out that play side inside linebacker. Again, look at the hole. Do we even get a double team here? We don't even get a double team here. Nice backside block it from the left tackle, getting his shoulder into it. So we don't get any penetration. 8's not going to make the play. And that's a big hole. Get vertical. If anything, I would tell him, once you get past that first level, look for that backside. Now we're running it to a wing. So now it's power read to the left. This is a faster read just because the C-gap defender looks like it's a walked up linebacker. This is one of those ones that the rules allow this thing to sort itself out if they want to use pressure to the front side. Watch 56. So 56 is a play side inside linebacker. He's going to walk up to the C-gap. Well, now he hits it. Well, he's the C-gap defender. All right, that's pretty easy to see here. Did I lose my marker? So right here, he's a play side inside linebacker. They're trying to Carl this way out here. Well, once he walks up, he becomes the read. So it doesn't matter who shows up in the C-gap, right? A, B, C-gap. This C-gap defender, whoever it is, and if he's going to be a backer and walk up and try to hit this with speed, it just makes this read a little quicker for the quarterback. So shuffle. Do not let your back get murdered here. He's got to take the hit for the team, but we're not going to hand him the ball, and then we're going to get vertical. Now, the thing about it here is that if this is the play side inside linebacker, and he now becomes the C-gap defender read, well, now the backside guard wrapping for 56 has no one to wrap to. So he needs to wrap to go find work. So again, hunting inside out was always the coaching point for me. Really nice double team. Look at the deuce from the left guard, left tackle. Watch the left tackle climb up. That's pretty violent right there. Left tackle bench presses both of them out of there. See ya. Nice seal. Again, really nice cut. Could have gave the ball to the right guard here too. My guy Jacob blocked somebody. There you go. Looking for work at the end. Nice. This time power read to the left down here to the bottom. Again, big run, easy read. This group was a little overwhelmed at the line of scrimmage. The team that we're playing, they couldn't reset their front. So we were motion and shifting all day, and they were trying to overload their front to our tight end, and we would move the tight end, and they wouldn't necessarily have an answer. So watch the front here. They can't get lined up. They got a nose, 3 and a 5, and nobody to the play side. This is an easy call, right? You don't have to be an offensive savant here. We're going to read the guy in front of 35. as the Carl. Only thing I would say here is there's nobody for the left tackle to double down on. You know, potentially could get an ace here if that guy's head up on the center, you know, and just let the right tackle block it, and we'll leave 44. Let him get all of 55 here. I personally would probably prefer that. So again, this is a funky front, and we don't spend a whole lot of time with like exotic, weird-ass fronts. I don't think you're going to see a lot of this to the weak side very often at the high school level. But if we had to do this again, I would probably ace this thing to 33, block it right here by the right tackle on the B gap, let him eat that, and then just leave this. He's not going to make that play. But the other part about this is the play side tackle, there's nobody in his gap. So when he goes down, he can't go where 33 is. He's got to go where 33 is going to be. And that's a hard thing to get, especially for a young guy, good player though. So again, 33 is just able to go over the top. If the left tackle were able to smother 33 here, this one would be even a better hit. Still a nice move. Can't handle him in space. Big play. Next one here. This is where I used to run it a lot. Again, I used to do this kind of shift to 3x1 or 2x2 a lot with the tight end, especially because we did so much peak tempo. I used to see if there would be any adjustment. If I could get a little bit longer look at the front, you can see your boy in the hood and the vest. I think I just yelled the play this time. But I love power read down here because you're able to stay spread, but also use your gap runs and get that point of attack double team. So some nice movement, and then some of our better athletes for the quarterbacks to let them kind of handle the ball down here. See if we can see exactly how we do this. So we shift to 3x1. Everybody looks over, peak tempo. Get the call or the yell. Move the back, make sure we're good to go. There's not even a C-gap defender here. So, I mean, this is the perfect power read. So no C-gap defender at all. We're keeping that thing running quarterback power. You know, can't get anybody back to the backside backer. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, you know what? Well, I don't think that, not that I would worry about it too much, but these are the types of real looks that happen in football. You know, in a perfect world, this guy's probably supposed to be the C-gap defender. But if the tackle takes him here, we'll go down here. We're going to try to block at this thing. And then we're going to be one short on the backside. So no one's going to be able to go here or here. So the quarterback's just going to have to eat this if he decides to cut back. So again, the read here, shuffle, shuffle, but there's really no C-gap defender, right? I think maybe if we were a little bit more locked in here, we could potentially leave this guy and call out the Carl here. But sometimes this is real life. This is how it actually happens. It's not always a picture look. So this is a little bit more muddy, but he knows the intent of the play. Get it blocked at the point of attack, make somebody miss, get in the end zone. Nice. Again, down in the same area, you can start to see a pattern from where I'm calling this thing. Again, to the wing. I love slot wing. Again, not blocked perfectly. You know, sometimes you're going to get exotic, muddy looks down here in the tight red, especially in high school. Who the hell knows what you're going to get? From the back here, we're going to Carl 21, looks like. Nope. I mean, again, there's no one to Carl. So you're going to get these essentially what I'm going to call an under front. So here's the shade. Here's the 3, defensive end, defensive end. They don't know how to line up to a wing. So here's our tight end. Here's our wing tight end. Here's the C-gap. There's nobody here. Someone will be the C-gap defender eventually, assuming you're playing a sound defense, which we always weren't. But someone will show up here. So that's who the quarterback is reading, whoever shows up in that C-gap. Again, I liked it out of wing. We ran a lot out of 12. You get essentially double arc. So these two working out, just in case you hand it off to the back. Someone shows up. But again, we're trying to get off that double team and get vertical. Now, even if there might not be a double team. So again, nice job by the right guard, just giving a flipper. Doesn't get much help there. I'd probably, wouldn't mind an ace call there from the center right guard. Looks like the right guard's a little late off the line of scrimmage. Right guard and right tackle. Nice job by the right tackle, leaving the play side inside linebacker. Not always easy to do. Right tackle can't get back, though, all the way to the backside, inside linebacker. So no, make somebody miss, fall forward, touchdown. Again, I really like this call down here, right inside the 10. Shocker, do it again. This time to the left, a little bit easier, cleaner. This time really take a peek at that double team on the left side, left guard, left tackle. And I preferred, usually you'll have one side of the offensive line be a little bit better. No double team here with the deuce, but a really nice job by the left tackle getting up to the second level. So down, smother. Again, you can see the hole because of this, of all these guys going down, gap down. So we're here. There's no one here. He can't get a double team. He gets all the way up to here. But this seal of this gap element of it, so down, 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 creates this massive seal that essentially is the inside barrier to the freeway. And then we're going to wrap and go hunting for someone who's there. We're arcing here, and then we're just reading that thing across. So hit that thing 1,000 miles an hour, shuffle, shuffle, get right off that double team. If there's no double team, there'll be a wall. Get vertical, shuffle, shuffle, boom. And that's as easy as it gets. And again, you can see for that teaching the wrap guard or the pulling guard, that the guy that he's pulling for right here will not be there, right? He's going to flow with the play. So you got to come out tight, but then go hunting inside out. And it happens more often than not. This is a cleaner look than most. Shuffle, shuffle, vertical. Get in there. Let's go. So that is a wrap. What is Power Read? A Power Read Clinic. Hopefully you really enjoyed it. I really love this play. I think it's an attitude play. I love plays that are same as for the run blocking unit, as far as being the same as power, and also allowing your quarterback to potentially hit some home run hits in the spread world. So lots of good stuff. I know you got to get past the hesitation of running the quarterbacks between the tackles. I don't love doing it all the time. I do love doing it in really versus tough opponents where it's going to be tough to move the ball. And in that mid-red zone area where we need to get touchdowns, I'd love to run it in. This is a great way to keep it spread and run it in, allow one of your better athletes potentially to be the ball carrier, really have multiple options to be able to get on the edge and do what you do if you're a gap run, double team point of attack offensive unit. So lots of fun stuff. Again, if you enjoyed this, please check out the JTO Offensive Framework course. In my opinion, it is probably the best content, the best thing that I have and potentially will ever share football-wise. So I'm excited to get that thing out there a little bit more. Share it. If you have questions, hit me up. I'm happy to talk through any element of that course and this video. So thank you so much for hanging to the end. I will see you next time. Have a good one.